What is one mindset shift that I need to make as a teacher in 2024? Why do student-centered approaches matter now more than ever? And how can generative AI support project-based learning in my classroom? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live here on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is Kyle Wagner. Kyle is the founder and lead PBL learning design coach for Transform Educational Consulting, an organization that empowers forward-thinking schools and educators to create more globally, socially, and emotionally aware citizens through project-based experiences and student-centered environments. Kyle is also the former coordinator of Futures Academy at the International School of Beijing, has 12 years classroom teaching experience, and worked as a humanities teacher at world-renowned High Tech High, I believe that's in San Diego. He has authored The Power of Simple and Where is the Teacher, hosts a popular podcast, and holds an M.Ed in teacher leadership. You can connect with Kyle on LinkedIn, on X at KWagSSD3, on Instagram at Kyle Wagner3, on Facebook at facebook.com/transformyourschool, on YouTube at Transform School, and at his website, transformschool.com. That's some good branding. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on the show today, all the way from Hong Kong. Are you, sir, ready to light it up?
I'm ready to light it up. Let's go.
All right. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time. The time change is cruel. It's terrible, but there you are at 11 p.m. wrapping up your day with me today, and I'm so grateful. So thank you so much for connecting today. Before we get into your work and mission, Kyle, I love to hear about your story. So tell us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you've faced somewhere in your teaching or education journey, and describe how you overcame it.
All right, sure. Thanks for the question, Tim. Thanks for having me here. I will say that I've done this at 2 a.m. with schools in South America. So 11 p.m. is okay. I've had my nap. I've had my coffee. So hopefully I'll be alert.
Nice.
I think I'm going to start with a story that I think a lot of us have faced as teachers, right? And it's within my first few years as a teacher. Very excited about getting to the classroom, as most of us are. Obviously had different expectations for the classroom than how it kind of panned out in reality. I think we all get into teaching with big hopes to really impact students' lives. And I had the opportunity to do that one of the first schools I taught at. But the story is the second year of teaching when I got that notorious pink slip. And then, this will be familiar, I think, to people who are educators in the States. Pink slip basically says, look, there's not going to be enough positions potentially next year, and you're one of the new teachers, and you don't have tenure yet, so you're on the chopping block. And I remember feeling just the weight of just such sadness, just getting into teaching, just starting my journey, really appreciating the principal I had who supported what I was trying to do in the classroom. Teaching like my hair was on fire. I know yours is all about teachers on fire. And that was kind of a low moment for me, but turned out to be one of the most fortuitous things that could have ever happened to me. And we might get into that later.
Amazing. Wow. That's something that not many teachers, or not the majority, certainly have experienced. And to hear that you survived, and not only that, you thrived and you stuck around the profession, that is a good ending to the story. And yes, would love to hear more. Well, I want to congratulate you on the publication of Where is the Teacher? The 12 Shifts for Student-Centered Environments. Here's a look at the book. And no, this is not a sponsored episode, but I'm excited to hear more about Kyle's work here with the 12 Shifts for Student-Centered Environments. I know Kyle is a qualified PBL coach, and I look forward to hear more. So Kyle, let's start with this question. In the age of AI, why do student-centered approaches matter more now than ever?
All right. I don't know if you might have even used AI, probably Canva, to put that together. Right. I'd be interested to hear, did you put that together using Canva?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And that kind of relates. I actually brought my book here, in the very kind of like low-tech version, right?
Yeah.
To show this off. But I think, what you just demonstrated by showing that whole graphic is how just ubiquitous I think technology has become and especially now with the onset of AI and generative AI, in really kind of shaking up the role of the teacher. And, the book is not so much necessarily just about, hey, here are all the AI tools, here's how you could use them. Because really, unless you have a total shift in mindset in terms of how teaching and delivering happens, teaching and learning in the classroom, you're not necessarily going to be ready for the onset of AI. So, I think the book is imperative to explore our role in the classroom. We're not the center sage on stage that we might have used to have been, where we are the delivers of content, because AI, YouTube, animated videos, the way curriculum is put together is so much more dynamic for kids than we can ever be. And we might be able to tell great stories in the classroom, which is still going to be important. But what's more important for us to connect, our content to really work that matters for students, big questions, their questions. They come in with curiosity and wonder. And it's more of connecting what we have in terms of our content to what they care about, to real purpose, and connecting those dots is going to require a shift in our role. So that's really what the book is about. It's about shifting our role in the classroom from being more kind of those guides, those facilitators of learning, and letting AI and technology and other means that can deliver the content doing that.
All right, want to say hello to our friend Mark Ryan there in Abu Dhabi. He's got his popcorn, Kyle, and he's tuned in. So thank you for joining us, Mark. We really appreciate you, and we're inspired by your new direction here this fall. That's exciting to hope to hear more about that. So let's dig in a little bit deeper, Kyle, into the 12 shifts. So as we think about these 12 shifts that we need to make as teachers, can you tease this a little bit for us? Share about one or two of the shifts.
Sure. So, there's 12, which might be a handful for people to think about, but we actually take bite-sized pieces. I tell everyone, focus on one particular shift in the classroom, and it's going to make a monumental difference in terms of your practice. So the shifts are kind of divided into the design of learning, the actual implementation of the learning itself, and the reflection, kind of evaluation of learning, and shifting kind of from this teacher-led to a student-centered type of role. And just before I share some of those shifts, the background of this, if you've ever heard of High Tech High in San Diego, definitely encourage people to check it out there. That's where I was able to get my start in student-centered learning. And, a story I always tell people is when I first stepped foot into High Tech High, the adults were very difficult to find, which is kind of where the theme of the book came in. Where is the teacher? And, students greeted me. They called me by my first name. They took me to show work that was beautiful work, actually, whether it was engineering, art projects. And they took me step by step through the stages of learning. And, that's really what impacted me. And I like to start with that before I get into the shifts, because the co-founder of that organization came into my classroom because I said, look, I'm struggling to make this a student-centered environment. I want you to come in and make it hard to find me. He said, well, here is a piece of paper. He gave me the paper, and it had shifts. Left side of the paper said, hey, discussion, who's doing the talking? Teacher-led, you're doing most talking. Student-led, students doing the talking. When it comes to actual groups, and learning, is it siloed and kids are just doing seat work, or are they working together? When it comes to the work, what's broadcast to the wall? Is it all your stuff, or is it the kids' stuff? So that's kind of, I think, just a window in. I don't know if you want to ask questions about that, or if you want me to just jump into some of those shifts.
I would love to hear about a couple of the shifts if you're game to. I know there's a little bit of a spoiler factor there, but I'd love to hear a couple of the. You already teased a couple right there, just in terms of who's doing the talking in the classroom. But yeah, anything else?
Sure. So if we look at the shifts, and it comes to learning design, how is learning happening in your classroom? Is it being led by content, or is it being led by inquiry? Okay, now that could be student inquiry, or it could be a big kind of open-ended question that you're kind of co-constructing with learners. An example of that is a high school classroom that had a classic literature study on The Great Gatsby, right? And they typically look at The Great Gatsby and they do, a book study, and they do book reports at the end. She shifted that. Instead of making The Great Gatsby the focus, the theme of the American Dream was the focus. And the question was, is the American Dream still alive? And if so, how can we redefine it to be more inclusive, right? And, her kids are in Southeast San Diego. They don't live the lives of the wealthy, in which that book pretty much exposes the story of. And their job was to really unpack the stories in their own community of the American dream. The kids decided on how they wanted to tell the story. She asked, hey, how do you want to tell this story? Found out one kid had a podcast and was a content creator. And so she kind of led this. She had them divided up into different teams in terms of how they produced that podcast and the stories that they featured. And the kids took it even further. They created a YouTube teaser for it. Some kids wanted to do blogs to share about their own personal stories and make those accessible to their peers. And it was all because she shifted to go from content-based to inquiry-based. And that's one of the shifts. Do you want me to do one more, or do you want to chat about that?
I am drinking this up, Kyle, and you had me a content creator. That was wonderful. But yeah, if you're willing to share one more, let's go for it.
All right. So I think also, another shift, and you probably heard it in this. The idea is that the shifts don't, they're not exclusive, right? Mutually exclusive. They really work together. And when you're implementing one, you start implementing others. So this idea of motivation, right? And what is motivating our learners? Now that question can motivate our learners, but more importantly, what are their personal interests? What's the purpose of their learning? So when we have purpose, a real world problem, we have their own interest infused in that, and it's accessible. So that's a shift from motivation of grades. Okay, on one side where we're trying to say, hey, this is on your grade, this is going to be on the exam, to actually, what's the problem, the challenge that we're trying to solve? Another year one classroom over here in Thailand, shifted the focus to be less about grades and more about a challenge. So as a year one classroom, they looked at the space in their school. They said, look, our space in our schools aren't very green. We talk about sustainability, but are we living that? And simply just change this idea to the concept of how do we create more green spaces at our school? Now, the teacher was then tasked to look at their curriculum and found out that there was way more curriculum that they were able to address in a real purposeful way. And the kids got to work right away. They were asking others around the school how they wanted to design this space. They found a particular space in school that they really had targeted for becoming more green. Kids were learning about plants and plant growth. They were learning about how to play different games that were, helping to improve their well-being as well in that space. And these are 6-year-olds now starting to actually take the content and make something out of it. And grades were secondary to the actual challenge that they're trying to solve and the ideas that they were able to come up with because they were given that space. So that's another one, the shift, motivated by grades to motivated by personal interest in solving a real challenge.
I often talk about the wages mindset and this idea. It saddens me so much when I see and hear schools that seem to be just working for the grade, students just working for the grade as if they need to get paid for their work. And that's such a sad shadow, I think, of what learning can be. So moving that shift from, or what I hear there is moving the focus from, instead of grades, working toward meaning and learning and growth and change in our world. And that's such a more compelling vision, isn't it?
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about the wage thing. Sorry to interrupt as well, because you see this even outside of school. I have friends, so many of them are leaving their jobs because the wage is not cutting it. It's not like what you get paid anymore. It's about having that purpose.
So let's talk about Chat GPT. It's sort of old news. It's been around for a couple of years now, and schools and districts have taken their different approaches to it. You've led a workshop, Kyle, showing teachers how to use Chat GPT to engineer project-based learning experiences. I was so interested to hear more about this. So what does that look like? How does Chat GPT actually fuel project-based learning?
Well, as we know, Chat GPT all has to do with the prompt that you give it, right? And being able to prompt Chat GPT to support you. I'm sure every teacher who's watching this has used Chat GPT to engineer lessons, lesson design, unit design, right? And if you're not using Chat GPT and you're out there, please start using it. It's going to save you a lot of time. But it's the same, with designing project-based experiences. You take one topic and you ask it, the right questions. You say, look, I got a topic, let's say migrations, and I'm teaching about migrations. I want to make it more dynamic. I want to make it more project-based. What are some 10 different examples of how to make this more more purposeful for students? And, it might shoot out 10 different examples for you. And then you go, okay, I really like this idea of migrations in our context, maybe Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very international city. People come from all over. Tease out a little bit more about how we make this, in a localized context, how we make it work. And it goes, okay, great. You could be telling migration stories of different people who came here. Kids could be interviewing these people, these migrants. They could be looking at geography. And then you go, great. Like, I teach, and here are the different standards that I teach. How might this work into the project? And goes, oh, here's how it might work into the project. You go, okay, perfect. Timeline this out. I've got 7 lessons. Time this out is 7 lessons of 90 minutes. How might I work that out? Great. Now create an assessment rubric based on those standards that you just identified they're going to need in this project. And pretty soon, you've got a nice packaged project-based experience that used to take days, to create, and everyone didn't have the planning time to do it. But now Chat GPT is our co-designer.
I love it. I love it. And I love that it's tied to those curricular standards. So it's very clear, it's focused, and it's aligned with the curriculum or the learning targets. So that is a great use case. Thank you, Kyle, for unpacking that for us. And thank you, Teachers on Fire, for joining us this morning. If you're getting value from this conversation, give this video a like. I do want to say hi to a few other friends. We've got the Elemental Educator tuning in from Alberta. He says, kids care most. It's not said enough and often not considered. Mel is here randomly, she says, from Africa. So thank you for joining us on a Saturday, Mel. And we've got on LinkedIn, Orly Lavi-Travis. I'm not sure if you are familiar with her, Kyle, but okay, excellent. She says it's too early for popcorn here in LA, but she's got her coffee. And yes, High Tech High in San Diego is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Orly. And back to Mark, he says, I love the idea of making things local and accessible. Also, I love Hong Kong. I knew it. I knew that connection. It was fun. I'm here in Vancouver, Kyle, and so many of my colleagues were in Hong Kong for the summer. I was like, what is going on here? There's definitely a Hong Kong connection in my world as well. Well, let's keep going. You requoted Rick Riordan saying, simple designs beget complex behaviors. Complex designs beget simple behaviors. So how can simple designs empower student agency? And can you share an example of what you mean by this?
Yeah, sure. Just to clarify, it's Rob Riordan, who's the co-founder.
Oh, did I say? Okay.
High Tech High. But Rick Riordan is a very popular author that most people don't know, right? With Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Yes.
Yeah, he gets mixed up with that a lot. So, this concept, simple designs beget complex behaviors. If this was the standout comment, I want to give you context for this. It's when I was trying to design learning experiences back at High Tech High. And if you recall, I told you the co-founder came in my room to support me. This is the guy who not only gave me the shifts, he gave me this quote, and it's always stood out to me. As a teacher, I was designing these experiences. Like, for example, these kids are going to put together these museums. They're going to represent artifacts from themselves, artifacts from their classmates. They're going to learn about archaeology. And, it's a great, wonderful concept, very hands-on. But I put together this 5-page packet as to how this project was going to work out and how everything had to tie together. And this was a complex design for this experience. And when he shared that quote with me, it made all the difference because I got very simple outcomes. I got the same shoebox museum repeated 25 times. Okay. That quote really helped me because he helped me see, hey, it's more about the prompt, the open-ended prompt and the simple design. That's going to get the complexity from students. So let's fast forward now where I'm in Beijing. I'm still a learning experience designer. I'm working with a collaborative team to design experiences. And, we designed one where we looked at our local air and water quality. And our question specifically was around how do we use data to make a positive impact on a local waterway? That was it. That fit on a Post-it note. Another person, Gary Sager, said it's the best prompts can fit on a Post-it note. So it's not something that's, just confined to a couple of people who quoted this. It really has to do with design. Game design has the same concept as well, make it simple. And the complexity came about, kids really looking deeply at this problem, kids connecting to local stakeholders, kids finding out, prototyping what they might be able to build, kids using the data that they have gathered to try to consolidate that. kids finding out others who wanted to design something similar. Some students were doing sustainable, reusable bags and pitching that to the local supermarket. Some kids were actually looking at the local flower shop and coming up with ways to be more sustainable there. Some kids even came up with their own toxic-free cosmetics because they're really into that and fashion. And I saw all of these complex things that we're trying to get out of these 21st century skills all come to life. And as in education, we love to bog things down with so much jargon. And it's not about trying to fit all those pieces together. It's like the simple design will then allow for all of these things to take place. So that's what that's about.
Yeah, I think sometimes teachers are worried about not prescribing enough, but one of the 21st century skills that I know we want to build in our learners is this tolerance for ambiguity. And when you think about IBL and PBL and even building thinking classrooms, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and Marissa Thompson's TQE, I mean, a lot of these activities are so rich, but they actually don't require a ton of teacher formulation, right? They don't. I love the example of the 5-page project outline, because that's sort of the education that I started out in as well. But you do end up with these checkbox projects that all look the same as you described. That was so good. So a lot of the power is unlocked actually when we give fewer constraints and we create space for ambiguity. That's obviously a balance to be navigated, but your book, I'm sure, helps us do that well. In 2021, Kyle, you started the Transformative Learning Experiences podcast, which is awesome because I still believe in the power of podcasting. Tell us about this journey. How has it enriched your learning, and where do you plan to go from here this fall?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to shoot this question back at you as well, because you got this podcast, and you're actually streaming this live, right? You're one step ahead of me, which is great. Maybe you could concur and agree that for me, it's about finding stories and connecting with people. That's what's been most powerful. It's brought in my perspective in terms of what people are doing and really what is possible. And it's helpful, I find, to just kind of find the community and build a tribe. So that's why I started, and I feel like it helps me continue to connect to people all around the globe.
I share a lot of the same, and yes, building connections. You know, I can make EdTech tutorials from my YouTube channel, and I know they will get way, way more views than my interviews and conversations, but I also know I'm not really building relationships. I'm not really building community, and so that's why I love these conversations. While I'm thinking about it, Kyle, tell us about your YouTube channel. What does it feature right now? How does it support the book, and are you planning on doing anything more there this fall?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I've tried to make it in bite-sized pieces. Look, like some people say the idea of a book nowadays, it's a bit outdated, right? People are getting just nice bite-sized content, and I agree. But also I feel like they can serve very complementary purposes. My YouTube channel is to give things in just kind of like digestible pieces. So right now on my YouTube channel, you have the shifts. If you look it up, you could see each of the shifts in 1-minute quick videos. Here's the shift. Here's what it looks like in action. Here's some suggestions of what you might try in a probing question, which in the chapter is backed up by more stories and, a scorecard. We've got then the shifts that are visualized. So this is to what to dig into like all year round. And then once you've kind of decided on your shifts, the YouTube videos are a good way to kind of sample each of those.
All right. Well, again, it's youtube.com/transformschool. Check out Kyle's channel. If you are tuned in on YouTube, open a new tab right now and bookmark that one. Subscribe. Although on YouTube, subscribing doesn't quite mean what it used to. You don't necessarily see the channel's content in your feed unless you actually watch their stuff. But yeah, keep going with the YouTube. I think YouTube is such a powerful teacher or location, I suppose, avenue for learning, and it's only going to continue to improve, I think. If you're enjoying this conversation, consider adding, speaking of YouTube, consider adding the channel to your Monday morning commute. Start your day and week on fire. Well, Kyle, let's start to wrap up with some biographical questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself outside of education, outside of project-based learning and professional learning. What's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions away from schools and brings you alive as a human being?
So much stuff. Probably too much for most people in the morning, because I'm waked up and I'm like immediately going to my keyboard, and I dream about songs, and I've probably
Mm.
written about 5 songs in my sleep that I then go to my keyboard, which is
No
actually
way.
right here. Yeah, I'm a musician. My parents said you have to play piano till you're 18. We rebelled at age 12, 13, my brothers and I. And so they said, okay, we'll let you take up a second instrument. And so we thought our parents were so cool because they're so liberal to let us take up a second instrument. But yeah, music and songwriting and singing. I'm in a band here. And then travel also as well. I'm in Hong Kong, so I've got the travel bug. I'm constantly going to different places. And, I also business as well, in developing my own business and finding out how to expand that, which, seems like we probably have the similar passions in that realm.
That is so cool. I'm a little bit jealous of your location, and I know the flights in the region. I mean, there are so many different amazing places that you can visit, and you're not paying Canadian dollars for airfare. So good on you there. Share
But you
about
don't want to pay our rent prices, though.
That's
You don't
true.
want to pay the rent prices in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that is true. Tell us about a personal habit or a productivity hack, Kyle, that contributes to your success and keeps your fire burning.
Yeah, so I'll show. I mean, I won't show all the actual entries themselves, but like this handy dandy journal, I try every morning to reflect first thing, to get my thoughts out before I'm hit with all the emails or the social media, or the busyness of the day. I try to wake up early and journal and reflect, and that I notice the days that I do that compared to the days I don't. Basically, I'm immediately kind of sucked into all the kind of things that the hustle and bustle of the day bring. But when I start with a journal and meditation, I feel like I can be more selective, and I kind of have a more clear focus for the day. So that's my hack.
Kyle, I'm going to go slightly off script here. Thinking about you as an entrepreneur, consultant, you have to be a strong self-starter. What time do you get up, and tell us a little bit about your morning routine? I mean, you mentioned the journaling, but what else does your morning look like?
Yeah, so I think if you're not a morning person, you might want to grab your coffee right before I share this, because I'm probably going to overwhelm you. I am a very early riser, probably 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. if I'm sleeping in. And I start, as I mentioned, with the journaling, start with some coffee. I usually try to get in some exercise as well. So I'll go for a run here on the harbor front. And pass all the other kind of maniacs who are getting up early. And then when I get back, as an entrepreneur, I look at the day, because some people say the biggest thing that scares them is this wide open, where do I start? What do I do? And I divide it into chunks. And my dad shared this with me, my dad who runs his own music school business, because I face this. I'm like, Dad, where do I start? Because I have the whole week in front of me. He said, it's a five column table, 5 rows for each day. I have the morning and afternoon chunks. The morning, I like to do my creative work because my brain is very alert. My afternoons, I start to slow down. So that's where it's like checking emails. It's like doing invoicing, these kind of things. So that's really kind of a bit of a hack that helps support me.
Love that. And it sounds like you must be a very disciplined person if you are not checking email or the socials in the morning and just focusing on that creative work. I'm very inspired by that. Kyle, is there a particular tool or app right now that you would say is really helping you in your professional work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's spread between Chat GPT and Canva. Chat GPT so much. Like, for example, helping support teachers. I'm like, hey, Kyle, I need an idea about animal habitats, and they're a year 1 teacher, and I'll get some quick ideas from Chat GPT around what might work in their context. So that's supporting me. It's also helping support the educators that I work with. Canva as well. I mean, I have using this constantly for any kind of like digital marketing stuff, any social media kind of posts that I'm doing, any events that are coming up. For whether it's for YouTube channel and its thumbnails, or its presentations. I mean, Canva turns us all into designers with really just the click of a mouse. So those are some of the ones I use.
We've talked about your book. Recommend one that you've been reading lately, or one that's been deeply influential in your practice.
I was going to recommend one, but I'm considering the audience, And
Okay.
it might be controversial, so I won't share that one. I gave this some thought. I'll share one of my all-time favorites. It's The Power of One. And, I think most people are familiar with this book because you've probably seen the film. It's an old film. And it's set in, South Africa. But it really has a lot of the elements that I think kind of define who I am and who I want to be. It's got travel. It's got adventure. It's got relationships. It's got hardships. And, the hardships that were faced in South Africa during the times of apartheid. And it has, a story of transformation that came out of that. And so that's kind of one of my all-time favorites. And it's kind of one I try to live my personal life by.
The Power of One. The book that I'm so curious about, the one that you sort of self-censored there, it doesn't start with The Subtle Art of, does it?
No.
Okay, it's a different one. All right.
I have read that one. Hey, I'm totally fine about having the F word, in the title.
Yeah.
This one was more just around the region of the world we're in, and
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, tell us about someone, Kyle, that we should follow on Education X, Instagram, LinkedIn, or wherever else you are connecting with educators.
All right, so I got to make a confession. As much as I have tried to get back to X, and Twitter, I have shifted a lot of things over to LinkedIn, and I find just the deeper conversations happening there. I don't know if you would concur. There's a lot of noise on X, so I'm going to give someone on LinkedIn who I think starts those deeper conversations. His name is Benjamin Freud. He's at the Green School of Bali, and first, two things. Check Benjamin Freud out because he asks great questions as to what learning could be and a whole kind of new concept for it and living it out at the Green School itself. So he's one to check out. Loni, my good friend Loni Bergqvist, she's over there in Denmark. She also asks great provocative questions about what school could be, transforming schools through passion and purpose. So check her out as well.
All right, I'll do some digging after this conversation and check out those two names. Thank you so much. And almost the last question here, Kyle, just for fun. What are you streaming during your downtime right now? Now, I know, as you said, you're an early riser, so maybe there's not a whole lot of Netflix and Prime Video going on these days, but what are you watching?
Yeah, I guess the more appropriate question is what am I falling asleep to at 10 p.m. at night that's on Netflix? Okay. So I generally will watch YouTube reruns of tennis matches for the most part because I'm a huge tennis fan. But my partner is very much into getting into Big Bang Theory. Now I know it's an older show, but they're restreaming on Netflix, and because I watched Young Sheldon, I'm feel obliged to watch Big Bang Theory, and yeah, I'm getting a kick out of that, and I feel like nerds are taking over the world, and that's a good thing.
Kyle, thank you so much for this conversation. You've set off so many ideas in my mind. What are the best ways for Teachers on Fire who enjoyed your content and would like to hear more? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And that's, again, it shows up there on X at KWags SD3. Same thing on LinkedIn. Don't ask me how I came up with that handle. That's a long story and probably not the best handle, but that's the way to get a hold of me. Email Kyle Wagner at transformschool.com. That's Kyle Wagner at transformschool.com. And, if you also want to message me on, Facebook, I think you've given that, or Instagram, any of those will work as well. And I wanted also to give, I don't know if you're going to ask me more questions about this, but currently right now, if people want to get a discount on Where's the Teacher, there's a 30% discount if you get it through Routledge. Maybe I could share that with you at a later point. But if you look up Where's the Teacher, Routledge, which is the publisher, and you buy the book at the checkout, just type in WT30, and you can get a 30% discount on that book.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That is great information as well. So again, Kyle's book, don't forget it. Don't miss your opportunity to pick it up at a bit of a discount. Where is the Teacher? The 12 Shifts for Student-Centered Environments. Well, thank you, Kyle, again for sharing your time with us. I'm impressed and even more so now knowing how early you're getting up. So, hey, treat yourself. Sleep until 7 tomorrow, Kyle, or give yourself a bit of a nap. But thank you for sharing your insights and expertise with the podcast today. Teachers on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day tuning into this podcast, either in video or audio only form. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Kyle Wagner sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Hustle hard, hustle every single day.